Greetings and welcome back to the podcast, Why Are You Sober? I am Sam, the host and a sober alcoholic, and I'm so glad you all are here. I hope everyone's had a good week. Why Are You Sober is a space where people can come to share their stories about sobriety, how they got sober, talk about why they want to get sober, share some experience, strength, and hope, and just get stories out there. This week, I'm so excited about my new friend, Maria. This week, I got to interview Maria, who is from Denmark. This is my first international story that we are hearing. And don't worry, I have more actually coming on the way. So I'm really excited about that. But Maria has an awesome story. It was really great to hear about what it was like growing up in Denmark and to kind of talk about the differences between sobriety language there and here. You know, I did want to address that oftentimes in these stories, there are stories about violence or, just a lot of triggering trauma that can come up. So, I always want people to be aware of that, especially when diving into these stories. I know Will's story suddenly, surprisingly, had a little bit of, a violent understanding. And Maria's also has some issues with that of abuse and bullying. So I want, people just to be aware of that and to be thoughtful about that. I also want to talk about how I know that in support group literature, a lot of times the support group says, not promoting that group. And I'm all about not promoting for the benefit of, yourself. I'm all for not promoting stuff. I totally get it. But I also think that, hearing people's stories about how they got sober is important. And if you got sober through a support group like AA or NA, it's okay to talk about that because that is a way that people can get sober. But as I always say, and as I love to hear stories about people who got sober in different ways. And I do have a couple of those stories coming out too. So, without further ado, let's just have the serenity prayer. Good and gracious friend, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you for doing this. I'm so very excited about this.
I'm just happy to help.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So
there you are.
Yeah, here I am. Yeah.
So, one little thing is I'm a Danish alcoholic, right? So yes. All of my terminology is Danish and gets kind of translated in my head. So feel free to correct me if I use a wrong word for something.
Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm very, very bad at reading the English Big Book. I think it's very complicated.
Yes. So. Yeah, it definitely is. It definitely can feel that way a lot of the time.
Yeah. Do you have a plain language one too?
I don't know what you mean by that. A plain language one.
Well, they rewrote it recently. Okay. They did a big book in Danish that was easier to read for people who have a hard time understanding it.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Yeah. It's a bit simplified, but the message is the same. So
that's awesome. Yeah. I did read a variation of the big book called the Secular 12 Steps, and it has taken all of the religion and spirituality out of the 12 steps and has really made it for people who really, really just do not want that in their program. And I've actually recommended that to a lot of people who struggle with religion because I found that it really does still speak to the heart of the original 12 steps. So I found that it is a really useful book too. But I'm going to look up that plain language one. That sounds really interesting.
See, my sponsor would hate a big book without the spirituality.
Oh, me too. And I do as well. But I know that it's not for everybody. So I try to find things, which is really one of the reasons I started this podcast, was to find ways to reach out to a lot of addicts, not just alcoholics, not just people who have gone to AA or support group, because there are plenty of people out there who've gotten sober without that.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I like to hear all those stories because I think the more stories that are getting out there, the more likely it is for someone to hear it who needs to hear that story, to be like, I relate to that one, you know?
See, that's why I always take the opportunity to share, right? Because I always end up, usually, I will think that what I shared was ridiculous and babbling.
Yeah.
And then someone will come up to me and say, you know what, that really resonated with me. Thank you. I needed to hear that today. And it always makes me happy.
That's awesome. That's really,
that's great.
I mean, well, that's the thing about, you know, helping and talking with other addicts helps us, you know, it's a full circle thing. So tell me, so you grew up in Denmark, you are Danish. So
yes.
So tell me about childhood. What was growing up like?
Yeah, see, if you'd asked me 4 years ago, I would have told you, oh, I guess it was pretty traditional, blah, blah, blah. It wasn't, but it started very traditional. So I am the daughter of a mom of 5 children, and I'm the oldest of those 5. Sorry, 6. I get lost in my own family tree. Okay. And I'm a child of the 90s. I was born in 87.
Okay.
And started school in 93. And when I was around 9 years old, I think maybe 10, my parents divorced, which is kind of, if people ask me, what's the day your life changed for the first time, that would be that day. And it was, I didn't even know divorce was a thing. Mm-hmm. Both of my parents are religious. We grew up, my dad plays the organ. And he can play like the big classical organs.
Yeah.
So I grew up being very proud of my dad every time I sat in church on Sunday.
Yeah.
I was like, he's the one playing up there. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, that is very cool.
Exactly. But that means that I was sheltered from a lot of things. And my dad kind of thought a prayer could solve everything, and it couldn't for 6-year-old me. Anyway, they got divorced, and that kind of shattered my whole world. I was the big sister of another sister, and my mom remarried a very violent, which I now know to be an alcoholic man. And he wasn't very nice to us.
Yeah.
Let's just, I don't want to trigger anyone or say anything, but it was very, just imagine the worst parts of your spirit, like the worst way you can break someone's spirit, and just imagine it yourself, because and when I was around 17, I moved in with my then boyfriend. At the time, I had already been drinking. I was drunk for the first time when I was 14, which is actually quite normal for Denmark. We have a very high, very low age for first time drinking. You can buy alcohol at 16 legally in convenience stores.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah, not hard things, but you can buy wine and beer from 16 and then everything else from 18. Yeah, back then you could buy cigarettes as a kid. You can't anymore. But, and we are told at our confirmation, I think must be the English word for it, like the Christianity confirmation of your baptism. That's kind of our big thing. We don't have a sweet 16, but we have our confirmation where you're an adult now, right? You can have wine with people at the party and stuff like that. Is kind of a rite of passage for a lot of parents to go, oh, let's get our kid drunk now. So I got a boyfriend, and that was the first time I actually had alcohol, was with this 16, 17-year-old boy that I was seeing. I was bullied up through most of my childhood. I've always felt out of place. I've always felt different. Still, to this day, I feel different. And when I was young, it was very important to belong and be part of the cool kids, but I wasn't. I was just bullied, and I had no idea why, because I never did anything particularly weird. But then I got this boyfriend, and obviously, since this is a very loose environment where everyone is drunk all the time, we partied, obviously, together. And I remember sitting there with his friends, having my first beer, and going, this is weird. This doesn't taste very nice. Why are people drinking this?
Yeah.
But then still having another, right? So I
yeah.
still remember the count. I had 3 beers.
Wow.
at my first party. And I was very drunk. I had a very low tolerance apparently back then. And it kind of made me feel more relaxed, and like I was still acting out of place, but it didn't feel as important all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So social lubricant, some people call it that. And that was how I used it. I'm kind of a low, what do you call them? High bottom, is that what you call it? High bottom drunk? When you reach your bottom earlier than other people.
Yes.
That's kind of me. Since I grew up with an alcoholic, obviously I would not want to be an alcoholic. I knew exactly what would happen, and I did not want to be that. But the first time I considered that I might have a problem was when I was around 19, I want to say.
Wow.
Yes, I'm a type 1 diabetic. I got diagnosed at 15 with type 1 diabetes. And I had an incident with this was another boyfriend, because one of my things is I'm kind of addicted to love too. Mm-hmm. So I kind of jump from guy to guy through most of my younger days. But anyway, I had a few beers. We were having fun. We were doing some karaoke and just goofing around. And then I don't remember anything. And the next thing I remember is waking up the day after being told that I had a hypoglycemic incident, which means I had a low blood sugar and I didn't realize it because the symptoms are masked by having drunk.
Yeah.
Because they look a lot alike.
Yeah.
So I felt weird and I assumed it was the beer, right? So I just ignored it. And apparently what happened was I passed out and had a cramping, like a seizure. And they had to call an ambulance and stuff like that. So for a few days, I had no short-term memory. That was kind of weird.
Oh, no. Oh, gosh.
Yeah. Like my boyfriend had to shower with me because I would wash my hair 5 times. I would forget.
Wow. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, for a few days. So that's the first time I remember thinking, this is not normal.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So, but then I broke up with that guy and I started going out every weekend, because what else is a single girl to do than go out and get drunk, you know?
Yeah. Go out and party.
And it was around that time, my early 20s, the first time I Googled, do I have a problem with alcohol?
Oh, wow.
Newsflash, I was drunk when I Googled it.
Of course. No.
Yeah, I came home from something, and I don't remember exactly how. I just remember that I got home and I was like, I might have a problem, and I Googled it. And then I read the 12 questions on AA's website, and I was like, no, that's not me. No.
Yeah.
Not an alcoholic. Not yet, at least. But I do think that I was born with some kind of addictive personality. Even before, even before alcohol, I had a thing with candy. I couldn't stop eating candy, and other things. Anything that feels good, I just want more of it. And it doesn't matter if it's booze or candy or TV shows or anything that gives you dopamine, really. So even though alcohol ended up being my drug of choice, I've been self-medicating for most of my life, I think.
Yeah.
In some way or another. Anyway, cut to about exactly 20 months ago on the 1st of January.
Wow. When
I woke up hungover and so ashamed. I had been out for a concert with he's still my partner now, but with my boyfriend and his friends. And I got very, very drunk because, it was right after COVID. So we were all very happy to be able to go out and buy beer again. Yeah. And I blacked out. And when I had blackouts, I would kind of come to my own senses sort of halfway through and then be very confused about why I was so pissed off. And then I wouldn't want to pull back on being pissed off because that would seem weird, right? So I just kept being pissed off about something I didn't remember.
Yeah.
That would end up with me verbally abusing my boyfriend. I've done this a few times, and I woke up the day after and actually remembered what was happening. What was happening was I tripped on our way out from the concert and on our way to go keep the party going somewhere else. I tripped in my high heels and fell and got embarrassed. Oh. And that embarrassment turned into anger when someone tried to help me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I spent the rest of that night being verbally abusive to my very, very lovely partner. And I felt horrified that I had said the things I had to him. I accused him of gaslighting me and stuff like that. It was horrible. And also very embarrassed about having done it, and then very, very scared. Yeah. Like, I'm lying here on the couch. I'm not even in the bed, which means he was still pissed off when he put me to sleep. Yeah. And now he's asleep in there. Is he going to leave? Was this the last straw? I was really, really embarrassed. He got up, he didn't say a word, and went to work. And I called the AA hotline that day. And talked to a very lovely man in the hotline who put me in touch with a lady in my area who turned out to be my first sponsor. I went to a meeting the day after this incident.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then I've done the steps a few times. I started the steps with this sponsor and kind of got stuck on step 4. Yeah. Which I know now is kind of normal.
Yeah, a lot of people do that. It is normal. Yeah, it's real normal.
I haven't relapsed since the day I went into my first AA meeting.
Well, that's good.
I tend to kind of lean into the program when I feel bad, and the same thing happened this time. I called my sponsor up after doing step 5 with her, and I was like, I don't feel any different. I actually feel a lot worse now. I'm thinking I might have missed something in my inventory. And she's like, well, I'm not sure what to do about that. That was basically what she said. Yeah. I have a friend who's kind of an old timer. She's been sober for like close to 30 years.
Oh, wow.
And as I was struggling, I called her up to talk about it. And she said, have you ever been to my home group? Why don't you come with me for that meeting on Wednesday and meet the people there and see if that's different? And I met the person who ended up being my next sponsor, who took me through the steps for the first time.
Wow.
Yeah. It's
that's
lovely.
Awesome. That's awesome. That's really cool. So do you believe that your drinking really came from the divorce and then the abuse? That kind of like the trauma from that is something that you were trying to cope or deal with, or led you to discovering that alcohol was a good coping mechanism?
Well, see, now we're coming into what I was telling you about, how I always felt different. I always felt out of place. I always felt like I wasn't getting it. Yeah. In social situations, I grew up with my mom. Like the first 5 years of my life was just me and my mom and my sister. I didn't go to kindergarten. Actually, it was kind of normal back then. Danish children go to kindergarten. That's just the normal thing to do. Yeah. But my dad wanted my mom to be a stay-at-home mom. And she was very young, by the way. She was like 18 when she had me.
Oh, wow.
It was kind of, if you do the math, it's basically exactly 9 months after they got married. So, yeah. Wow. So she was home with me. That means I wasn't really socialized. So when I started school, I didn't know how to do with kids. I was very good at adults, but I wasn't very good with kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I realize now, because that feeling different thing has kind of followed me into the program too. I always feel a little out of step. Yeah. And I have recently actually acted on that, because now I'm not drinking anymore. So I expected that sobering up would help me feel better about myself. And I talked to my doctor, and I recently got assessed for ADHD and figured out that was actually what was going on.
Yeah.
And when I Googled it, I found out that not only are women basically overlooked in this whole ADHD circus,
Yes, they
but
are.
it's actually, yes, they are.
Yes, they
and
are.
we should do something about that.
Yes, we should. Yeah.
But also, it's actually quite normal for undiagnosed, unmedicated ADHD people to self-medicate.
Yes, absolutely.
So while I do think that my very bad self-worth and my God-shaped hole came from also the divorce and the horrible father figure I had, I do think that it's something I was born with.
Yeah.
I think I was born with ADHD, which worsened everything else. And since I didn't know how to deal with it, I just got drunk.
Yeah. Do you believe that addiction is a disease that we are born
Yes.
with? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And do you feel like
But the addiction isn't the disease.
okay, yeah.
The defects are the disease.
Yes. Yeah.
We treat them differently. So whether we overeat or have sex or drink or do drugs, it's basically the same thing as a God-shaped hole. That's what I think.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love it. So do you believe that your family has a history of addiction and alcoholism?
Oh, I know they do.
Okay. And so are you,
sorry.
no. So are you like the first person in your family in any generation to actually like have gotten sober?
As far as I know, yes.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. You know, I talk with, as I've talked with a lot of people, I have been finding that there are many of us that are in that, I quote unquote want to call it a club of like the first generation in our families of the ones who have gotten sober and stayed sober. Cause I had an uncle who, died right around 50 years old. And it was because of his alcoholism. That just straight up. I'm
sorry for your loss.
And I definitely have some family members who still struggle with alcohol in their own lives. And, you know, I'm not going to tell them they're an addict because that's not my place. But, you know, I know that on both sides of my family, it has been a hard thing that my family's dealt with, you know?
Yeah.
So,
you know, my mom has kind of been a magnet for bad men after the divorce. So I'm thinking my mom might be codependent and basically attracted to either addicts or people who did worse things than being addicted.
Yeah, people that she can help and that need her.
Yeah, well, it's I call it the Florence Nightingale effect.
Yes,
right? I can fix him.
Yep.
And I have a little of it too. I'm just lucky. I have a partner who just refuses to be saved by me.
Yeah. So
he just pushes back and goes, you know what? You're not the boss of me. I can get help when I want to. Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your partner stayed with you through your own getting sober.
Yes.
That's awesome. That's very cool. That's very cool that you have that support.
He actually finds it kind of ridiculous that I'm in AA. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he does. He came home from work that day I told you about, the day after the blackout.
Yeah.
And I told him, you know what? I called AA today, and I'm going to a meeting tomorrow. And he was like, "That's a bit wild, isn't it? Isn't that a little overkill?"
Oh.
Which kind of makes me laugh now. I'm still a smoker. I never stop smoking. Every time I try to stop, it goes 2 days, and I'm back on the cigarettes. I like my cigarettes. Anyway, he actually told me about 2 weeks ago that he'd rather have me drinking than smoking.
So, oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, you know, smoking for me, that is the one addiction that if I would go back to it in a heartbeat. I loved it so much. I mean, I do not smoke now, but I've smoked for a while and I loved it. I feel like I always relate to Chandler Bing from Friends, who always was craving a cigarette. And I'm like, that is like, and I tell people, you know, alcohol brought me into the rooms of AA, but AA has helped me, funny enough, quit smoking and not have any, you know, It's helped me.
My first sponsor did that too. She used the steps to quit smoking too.
Yeah. So it was really great. So, but I mean, I still crave it all the time.
Yeah. Now I was kind of panicking a few months ago because I realized I didn't have the money to smoke.
Yeah.
For that month. So I ended up spending my last money on a vape because I was just like, I just need nicotine for the next month. Yeah.
So how has your family reacted to you getting sober?
Most of them actually was kind of the same as my boyfriend.
Okay.
As I said, I'm kind of a high bottom. So I drank alone or with people that I kept separate from everything else. So I wasn't yet drinking at work. I was getting to it, I think, but I wasn't drunk at work. I never went to work parties. My colleagues never saw me drunk.
Okay.
And
wow, you were very careful. You were very careful.
I was.
Yeah.
I was trying to be. A lot of people still saw it sometimes, right? Because when I went out to do karaoke and I met my boss there, obviously.
Yeah.
So, but I tried to keep it separate. So the only people who have seen me drunk is my boyfriend and my mum and my siblings. And when I talked to my siblings about it, most of them were like, well, yeah, there was that one time when I was really worried about you. It was a very, very hard binge for me. I lost someone in my family. Okay. And while we were grieving, at some point I decided it was a great idea to empty a bottle of schnapps. That would do it. I was certain about that. And actually one of the other people at the party had to carry me to bed. Okay. Yeah, and my brothers saw that. I apologized to them the next morning because I was like, they are not going to see me drunk, and they did. So, yeah. But most of them are very supportive. Most of them are like, well, if that's what you need, then that's what you need.
Good.
Even doing my step 9, I have had a few people kind of roll their eyes and go, yeah, okay, I'll listen, but isn't it over? Okay. Didn't we do this already?
Yeah.
Even my boyfriend, he was like, yeah, I'll play along, sure, if you need it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. But they're happy I'm sober and happy.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Now, is your partner sober, or does he still drink?
No, he's not an alcoholic, but he drinks socially, yes.
Yeah.
I work in restaurants most of my sober time. Yeah. So I'm around alcohol a lot. It doesn't bother me at all, luckily enough.
Yeah, I had that blessing too, that I was able to still go to parties and go to concerts and go, all over the place and just be around it and be okay, Yeah,
some days I'm really not okay, but I'm getting better at knowing if that's going to happen. So if someone calls me and goes, do you want to go do karaoke tonight? I'm like, no, not today. Sorry. Can't do it.
That's good.
But yeah, but it's kind of hard because I'm having to do schooling to learn about things like wine and spirits. January last year, they had us all smelling and tasting wine. I didn't taste it, obviously, but I smelled it. And it happened a few times that I sniffed that glass a bit too deeply. Like, oh, damn it, that smells good.
Yeah.
Yeah, but everybody in my class knew that I was sober for that same reason. So I didn't expect them to stop me, but me knowing that I told them. Yeah. Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, I always found that too, that I was not worried about people knowing that I was sober or getting sober or even in the program. I always told people that I will protect your anonymity, but know that I am okay with not having mine. That I'm okay with, and I'll tell people, I'm like, you can use my name. You can tell people that I'm an addict and that I'm sober. Yeah, exactly. I love that tattoo. That's great.
It's for your listeners. It's the AA logo, and under it is the Danish word for serenity.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful.
I gave that to myself this summer.
Oh, that's really cool.
So just, the proof is in the pudding, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the question I always ask when I'm wrapping up my podcast, but why are you sober?
I am sober because I want to be myself.
That's good. Yeah. I like it.
I'm not myself when I'm drinking. I'm kind of Mrs. Hyde, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I always thought
I do not like her. She can go to hell.
Yeah.
I don't like her.
I remember one, it was like Thanksgiving or Christmas, and one of my nephews who had only really grew up knowing that I was sober most of his life. One day was just like at a holiday, he was like, "Why aren't you drinking?" Like, cause all the other adults were drinking. And I said, I can't have it because it doesn't make me a good person. And he was like 9 or 10 years old. And he was like, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, think about it like the Hulk, like where I'm Bruce Banner, but when I have alcohol, I become the Hulk, and it's not good." And so,
do you remember Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers?
Yeah.
I usually use Monty when he smells cheese.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yep, exactly. So that's the thing. I love that.
Or Winnie the Pooh, who's going to forget everything else just to get stuck in a hole trying to get honey.
Yes. Yeah, those are all great. Yeah. Well, Maria, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. It was so wonderful to talk to you and hear your story.
You're very welcome. I'm happy to share.
You are a beautiful person, and I wish you all the best. And I will let you know when I'm going to post this podcast. So thanks so much.
Thank you for letting me.
Have a good day.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Gosh, I am so excited that Maria chose to come on and share her story with us. It was just such a blessing and honor to get to just sit with her for a little bit. We actually did it over, I think, Facebook Messenger. So it was fun that we actually got to see each other. And maybe in the future, I might start recording and maybe putting some videos out there. But for right now, I think I'm just going to stick to the podcast and interviewing. So next week, very excited. I have another friend again from Central Europe, this time in Spain, actually. It's not Central. Well, I don't know. But she's from Spain. Her name is Ivana. And I'm super excited that she came on to talk with us too. So that'll be next week's podcast. And she definitely got sober in a very unique way. So I can't wait to share that with you all. So until next week, I'm wishing you all a whole lot of peace, love, and joy. And I hope you all have a great week. Bye.